On this episode of Beyond the Art, we welcome Cara Romero, an acclaimed Indigenous photographer whose powerful images challenge stereotypes and reclaim Indigenous narratives through a bold, contemporary perspective. Through her lens, history, identity, and imagination come together to create images that are as thought-provoking as they are unforgettable. This is Beyond the Art with Cara Romero.
Cara, welcome to Beyond the Arts.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
Let's talk about your growing experience on the res between there and is it Houston? You grew up in the Houston area.
Yeah. Born to interracial parents in 1977 in Southern California, Los Angeles area, and my family relocated to the Chemehuevi Valley Indian Reservation, which is in the heart of the Mojave Desert on the California side of the Colorado River. That was 1979, and our tribe had reorganized in 1970. So we were one of the first families that moved back home. And I lived there until my parents split. And really for the next 15 years, I went back and forth between Houston, my mom's side of the family, and my dad's side of the family on the reservation. I still go back throughout the year and have a home there. And when I speak about home, that's where I'm talking about, is Chemehuevi Valley.
Okay.
Well, you began your academic path in cultural anthropology, which is almost on the other side of actually imagery of what you create now and are known for. How did that shift from words to images become such a defining moment in your career?
Well, I think cultural anthropology was at a time where maybe it was the fastest liberal arts degree I could get to get out of the University of Houston. And I was really soul searching. I mean, I was 21 years old and going into my junior year at the University of Houston. And I had always been an artist. So I was taking arts classes throughout my university study, and I had an opportunity to take black and white film. And I borrowed a camera to take the class. I had never picked up one with manual controls, and had a professor named Bill Thomas that really emphasized narrative and storytelling. Even though we were like beginning and starting out, it was mandated that it had to have narrative. And he made me feel like I was really good at it. And he really made me understand the power of photography in particular as a medium to be able to evoke so much. And I think I understood pretty quickly that this was going to be what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I mean, it really spoke to just being able to visualize that lived experience that was missing everywhere I went besides home. And I ran off to art school in Santa Fe.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fanboy. Huge. I mean, each time I've seen your pieces, like, I need it. Especially last night at the gallery opening, there was that one that's backlit, I believe.
Yes.
That is such an amazing and impactful piece. You've often said photography can tell the truth that anthropology sometimes can't. So how does that incorporated into when you start thinking about something you need to have the imagery? Explain that.
I think it's the best way I can describe it is layering content. And maybe sometimes the ideas come from, like something flashing in your mind's eye and then trying to figure out what that means. And sometimes it comes from a person or an issue or an experience that we have in common. And I'm like, how can I build a story around that? Because we can relate so much through stories. And that is really how I approach being able to say so much. I don't have to worry about if it's in order, if it sits into linear time. I can just world build, and you can really play with time. And you can really visualize so many psychological connections that it's very difficult to do in words.
Your compositions are very theatrical with really intense colors, absolutely beautiful. What drives your use of such bold and visual language?
Well, my formal training in photography started out in black and white, and I have a background, just in, design classes and painting and studio arts. And I once had a teacher say, if it doesn't work in black and white, it doesn't work in color. And we're talking about separation and composition and heaviness and lightness. And as we continue on our journey as artists, we figure out what we're good at. I am really good with color. It was very, I understood that early on, even when we were doing color film, that I could see red and green and blue and balance it for what it needed. And then as I found my story really as giving back to Native community, the play of the psychology of color and the psychology of light. And after I learned that through like more formal training, this is like something that's absent our community. What it is about this highly produced, controlled light that takes, a lot of formal training to attain it very quickly, psychologically says that we're of the present, that this is happening right now. And we're consuming this type of imagery, everywhere. And so it's kind of become a universal language of the present. And that was what really made me even lean into color more than just being good at it, was that it placed us here. And even in the future now, right?
Yeah.
Like you can come up with really futuristic colors and evoke a lot through that psychology.
Well, that kind of leads me to a question. You often depict supernatural elements in everyday life. How do you see that overlap between the spiritual and the tangible in your own worldview as you start creating these spectacular pieces of art?
Well, I think all of us come from like storytelling or song singing that is about that supernatural. Maybe it's something that's common across all Native America. But I can remember also being at the University of Houston back in the days of going to bookstores and picking up Louise Erdrich's books. And it was the first time that I had read magical realism on the pages of what I was reading. And she really changed my life. I mean, for the women to be able to control the wind, is something that as a young person, never goes away, but it's also I identify with that so much. And so this idea of supernatural in everyday life is something that shows up in our stories. And I think that we kind of think that way. So it feels very nuanced and inside from native to native.
In many ways, your work is collaborative storytelling, just like you had said. How do you choose the people you photograph, and how does that collaboration shape the final image?
It's pretty much always been friends and family. And truly, when I started out, I was much better by myself. I'm very shy. I think the camera, having something between me and another person, has been helpful for me to make connection. And while I was very scared to work with people early on, I think when I took my time and found the beauty in my own backyard with friends and family, there's this emotional connection that's happening. There's this trust. There's this ability to stay really true to story with your friends and family.
True, yeah.
You can debate things, you can talk about things, you can talk about what maybe feels a little vulnerable. And I think I like to take my time with the photographs. And so all of that really lends itself to, you got to be pretty close to a person to be will you come play imagination with me for a couple days? And so, but it's really worked. And, being here in Santa Fe, there's this beautiful intertribal community. And so that's really taken me places as a Chemehuevi woman that only this place could. And I get to go back home and work with my community back home as well. But both are a part of me in the journey.
You've talked about digitizing new artistic tools. What does that process mean to you when you're working in such a historically colonial medium like photography?
Well, I have had to learn to not think about it too much, to be honest. When I started out, I felt an outsider to my own community. I thought, why am I so weird? You know, like why do I want to do this of all mediums? We grew up making in community, but there was something about this particular medium that called to me, and, you know, to thine own self be true. And so I think we're able to see the power of many mediums, and we begin telling our own stories because that's what's natural to do. And I think once you realize that you have that ability, we can look at our own community and say, I'm the very best person to do this, you know, and I want to serve my community. And I think that it really takes the nature of photography and art back.
Many of your works addresses pressing issues, environmental destruction, representation of Native women, and maybe misconceptions or stereotypes in pop culture. How do you balance art and activism?
Well, I have produced the Pioneers Indigenous Forum for 14 years. It's a national nonprofit, and the annual conference takes place in Berkeley, California, every year in March. And by producing the Indigenous Forum, I have this opportunity to bring, you know, about 30 to 40 Native leaders, subject matter experts, frontline fighters, people from the res to come together and have these panel discussions. And I have a lifelong love of learning, but that's a hard scene to come by in our community. And you get to listen to so many people articulate about such difficult subject matter. And so I really learn every single year when I go about how people are talking about things. And that's a space where we can activate and then take best practices like back to our own community, which is about communication. You know, we have to communicate, we have to mobilize knowledge, you know, in between reservations, intertribally, bring it back home. And I have lived in community off and on my entire life. So I have served on government back home. While I'm not a politician, I learned more about how to be a citizen activist during that time in my life. And I think, you know, evil prevails when good people do nothing. And so, you know, we all have our things that we're passionate about. For me, it is land and ecosystem preservation and arts and really everything in between.
Yeah. A question comes up hearing this. What could... So we're in real contentious times right now. And I feel there is a lot of cynicism from my tribal community, from a lot of tribal communities around the nation towards their tribal governments. We're quick to criticize. But saying that, I also recognize that people get into office and people get into these positions to try to do good or do what they can to help their communities and to advocate for them. What could the citizens of your community or my community do to support their elected leaders to help create change or create space to help each other?
I think I could probably only speak to my own community. And I think attending the meetings is really important to be able to stay current on issues. But truly the way it's supposed to work is the people are supposed to bring the legislation. They're supposed to really be the steering force behind what our elected officials do. And so you really have to engage and be active and find your voice and you know, be loud within community. And so we're a fierce political tribe. And so we do a lot of that. We debate things out at the council meetings. And I think for being a 1934 IRA tribe, we do really well. And we have challenges that are, evident in the world, right?
Mhm.
And so I think just staying involved.
In today's society, there's still a lot of misconceptions and stereotypes of Indigenous Native Americans. You've challenged the one story narrative of Native life. What are some of the most harmful stereotypes you're trying to dismantle through your work?
That's a really great question. I think two things come up for me right away. On one hand, being a young person consuming imagery of Native American people or looking at Native American photography, most of it was ethnographic, and most of it was from the turn of the century and incredibly beautiful and capturing the imagination and a connection to our past. But I feel like it kind of stopped time. And so then everybody's reference in their imagination is a historic bygone people. And I think in one way, I hope to counter that. And first audience would be Native youth. So I grew up feeling like if I'm not that, then what am I? And that can be like dehumanizing to yourself. And
True.
I grew up of a generation where we saw a lot of racist mascots and, endured turkey feathers at Thanksgiving and racism at school and on and on and on. I think also the other side to that is I come from a lot of really strong Native women. And so I think it's really important that I'm a woman behind the camera. Because it does something very different for our women. And I think the imagery of our women is better when we're making it ourselves. And so that is something that I see like giving humanity back through photography. And if people from outside of the culture can understand that we're not imaginary and that we're living,
Right.
I hope that all counters the painful stereotypes that are out there.
And I think Native American women telling or being in control of that narrative and telling that story helps a lot of young girls seeing that they do have a voice as they continue their journey and someone to aspire to or someone that they can identify with. That helps a lot.
Your images blend historical and contemporary references. How do you decide where to anchor each story in time?
Well, I think that they're all kind of timeless. If I really had to think about it, I think we pull from our past in our visual vernacular to place us in a certain community so that we're identifying markers, right, of where this is taking place. And then we're both as Native people. So I think through photography and visually to be able to represent that idea of being, everything that our ancestors passed down to us while being a contemporary people or being in the future is really what I do want to communicate visually. So that it's much more fluid, and that those young kids that are looking at those historic photographs can feel like this is how our indigeneity pops up in modern times, or maybe some people can relate to it,
Connect to it.
Yeah.
Well, as a Native woman artist, do you feel there's a different weight or expectation placed on your work that differs from others?
I'm sure there is. I came from a community that has a lot of women's leadership, and we are often have a female-dominated government. We're allowed to be loud and take up space and be strong when we're little girls. And so I think more often when I'm not on the Chinwebi reservation, experienced, what you're speaking to. But I was raised to, not let it affect me.
Right.
And
We have a voice.
we have a voice. And I think most of my audience and people that I connect with are other women as well. I think I could safely say that. And when you have that audience feedback, I guess for me, my experience has been that's the most important.
And I think also for non-natives, it's not a matriarchal society where a lot of Native communities are determined by the matriarch and your mother and so on. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And it's nice to see that those dictations are not passed down to Native Americans, that, women have a voice. They're in the government. They're part of the circle, part of the conversation, and being collaborative within the community.
Yeah. So you've been a part of the PBS Craft in America. How did that experience impact your career or broaden your audience?
Well, I mentioned earlier that I am very shy. So that was probably the biggest thing for me to overcome, is having people really in your life documenting your art making process. They asked to come back to the reservation. That was a lot more stressful than maybe they realized.
Okay.
And it was it's been a really exciting experience for, I'm sure, my present day community to be able to see themselves, So I think any time that that happens for me, it's really special and important. As far as the career, it's all taken me further than I ever imagined. I really never set out to do any of those things. So every time, something comes, I still feel like just really in awe of all of it. I had people
like a pinch me moment.
Like it's always like that. Yeah. I feel forever humbled, and gratitude. People called me from all over the country. People wrote to me from all over the country, and it was really a very special experience.
Can you share the story behind one of your most personal, meaningful photographs or pieces that you've done?
I have two that come to mind right away, and I think one of them is Hermosa with my daughter Cricket. We had the kind of crazy forced opportunity to work in our pod during the pandemic, and I relocated my family to the beach for 3 months. And because I couldn't work in community, I worked with my daughter day after day after day. And one day, as we're out there at sunset, and we have the strobe lights like balancing the foreground and the background, the lights went off and a big wave splashed up and hit her from behind. And so you can see just all of the ocean break and spray all around her, but she hasn't even reacted yet. So this is like the capture of this, uncanny capture of time. And she's such a powerful young person. And it's just one of those photographs that really evokes so much emotion for me, and really like shows the world like who she is, because she's a very, very special person. I just recently started to pick up my old film cameras. So I'm shooting medium format film with black and white back home. And I just released those pieces at the gallery. I did cyanotypes and printed silks, and they're dreamy, and they're really starting to feel like home. And it's got my little nieces and nephews in it. And so I guess that's been the second most powerful experience for me just recently.
Those were something special. Walk into that gallery.
Yeah.
It's like a dreamscape or a memory, and just beautifully executed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Your practice is deeply tied to cultural protocol and ancestral respect. How do you navigate while pushing creative boundaries?
I think each of us are always on that learning journey. I think we know that as culture workers, you are always the student, never the master, right? And so, of course, when we're In our own communities, it's really, much easier to understand the protocol. But to be honest, Chinweibis are pretty unorthodox. We're really like, there's not a ton of regalia. There's not a ton of order. Our ceremonies are very different. Our ceremonies are very social. In some respects, our singing is very social. And then other tribes are so, orthodox and traditional and ordered. And I think, being able to go to tribal college is one unique experience that not all of us have to begin to understand each other's protocols, find similarities, but then be able to observe such wild differences. And, we can laugh about it, and we can also respect it. And so I think, going back to the question about who I work with, friends and family, it helps you be able to always serve, never offend. That's not our intention in community. To share stories that are appropriate, never inappropriate. To make sure that the people that are collaborating have agency, that they want to tell the same story, that they're interested. So all of those things really help me walk the line.
In your opinion, what makes photography uniquely suited to document and reinterpret Indigenous story in today's life?
Well, I wouldn't say that photography is the only medium that does that by any means. For me, I think what is interesting about photography is the realistic nature of it. That whether you're world building and making up a moment, the impact that it's real people and place, it really, you consume it very differently. You bring your own experience to it. I think it has just a different effect on the viewer. And that is, I think, just a beautiful reason why to use it for storytelling. It's been something that's made me really passionate about it. I love also moving film work, and I think it's really like a burgeoning medium within our communities. And so I think the more storytelling we're doing from inside community, the better.
So when you have an idea in your mind or a story that you want to tell and kind of translate into film, what's that process for you? Or is it just you have it and then you see where it goes?
I think it's a little bit more of the latter. I have it and let's see where it goes. I do produce in a way as a mother. And as a mother, I am responsible for a lot of caretaking and other people. And so when I'm able to compartmentalize my time to make and to create, that's kind of created this like world building. And I have like a certain amount of time to make the story and to create the story. I usually think of the idea in my mind's eye and then start seeing what's possible. And it feels like you're like calling it in a little bit, and you're moving around ideas and kind of seeing what comes together. The shoot itself, I think, is like jazz and improvisation. Like everybody's there and it's really playful, and you kind of come with a set list. Like, we're going to try this and we're going to try this. And you're talking to lighting and you're talking to the collaborator, and you're, and so you're really kind of co-creating. I have learned in that part of the process, like not to be so fixated on an idea, and you have to like move around and remember to be flexible and not get stuck. And so there's so many things to think about on set. But really, like the creation of the print or the object afterwards, I think that that's a totally different part of the process in post, or whether you're in the dark room or you're in the digital dark room. That's like a painterly approach. And then you're really looking at the object very differently at that point. You've chosen the perfect one or ones, and that has as much psychology into the final piece as the making.
So do you have a stockpile of ideas? Or is it just come natural? It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do for the next 6 months.
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think commissions are a little bit harder for me when, you need to make this specific idea
Right.
by a certain time. I think just getting older and like dialing in on what is your creative process. I'm like, oh no, I much prefer to have the multitude of ideas and do whatever I want,
Yeah, right.
whenever the inspiration strikes me. And I think that that's the biggest difference, but I do have a lot of ideas. I don't have enough time, so
None of us do, unfortunately.
yeah. Yeah.
So your studio is here in Santa Fe,
Yes.
and you're very close to your home community. How are the two places impact, or the two environments impact your creative process?
I think that there's this point in the process where I'm figuring out the aesthetic and if it's going to be in studio or if it's going to be out on landscape. And I kind of look back at what I've done and then try and categorize it, or maybe like, debrief on what happened there, But I would say it's about half and half. I'm doing some in studio work with controlled lights, and then other times I'm out in the landscape here and around, or typically back home. I am mostly concerned with continually being creative. I'm one of those people, like many artists, that if they're not creating, they're not spiritually happy. And in that way, I would say I have to make no matter where I'm at. And so I think that that's kind of a driving force more than one or the other place.
A lot of your work has humor to it alongside serious commentary. How do you decide when to be playful and when to be direct?
I think that the work, whether serious or playful, really comes from the editorial nature. So I think it has to do with the person or the concept. So kind of coming the other way.
Right.
Figuring out the story together, figuring out if that's funny or serious together. Sometimes they're about the person themselves, and I think that informs that as well. I would say most of the women that I photographed, I kind of see this omniscience to their look, and I don't know if that's serious or playful, but
so sort of that Mona Lisa, it's like, is she smiling or is she frowning?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But I like that look, that they're all knowing, that they have intelligence. And
when you see the piece in its, I guess, before the finished state, and knowing if it's humor or more serious, is it a collaborative environment with your team? Do you see what their responses are?
Yes, I see what Diego's responses are, and I see what my team thinks about how I've edited. I also am in collaboration with the person, making sure that they have agency over whether they like it and kind of agree with, what's going out into the world, really. And that's how we do decide. And then sometimes I have to break away and do my own thing.
Many of your subjects come from different tribal backgrounds. How important is intertribal experience? How important is intertribal connection to your storytelling?
I would say intertribal connection is really important. I think Santa Fe specifically speaks to that intertribal connection, and the history of the Institute of American Indian Arts coming here and the impact that that's had on Santa Fe Indian market. Many of us come to tribal college from isolated communities around, or maybe like urban Native backgrounds, and those can be really, really lonely experiences. Each one has its own kind of maybe loneliness, but the intertribal community in Santa Fe, I think, is what keeps so many of us here. I think a lot of us have similar backgrounds, and still need to go home to like recharge in that, land to spirit way, but also need to be around each other and see each other at the grocery store and have coffee and be able to make art together and go see shows together. And that's just a really important part about living here. I make work with friends and family, so it's been kind of a natural way of life. I've lived in Oklahoma. I did a lot of work with my Oklahoma family. I live in Santa Fe. I do a lot of work with my Santa Fe family. And then of course back home.
Right. If you could speak to young Native artists exploring photography, what's the advice you would give them as they continue their journey?
I would say any of our arts will show us that it takes a lot of time to hone your skill, whether you're weaving or beadworking or making photography. If there's some art that you love to make, give yourself time, give yourself many seasons, to be able to make the thing that's in your mind's eye. And with photography, it's a much more expensive medium. And that expense can make it difficult for us to feel that it's not frivolous to spend money on equipment and film. You have to learn to invest in yourself. And if this is what you want to do and what you want to make, then you have to trust that spending and investing money in yourself and your creativity is not frivolous, but really self-care, like a radical act of self-care.
So you've seen a lot of your works go into public and private collections. How does it feel knowing that your images, your work will live on as part of the cultural history?
It feels two ways. I would say in one way, the photographs were made in really intimate places and time with community. And my career is really built out of Santa Fe Indian Market. So my primary audience was, the people that were coming here, gathering around art. I kind of mentioned it earlier, like it took me much further than I ever imagined. And with that I think it's scary. We're from culturally private communities where most of us are, pretty private people. And so that's actually felt kind of, crazy and scary.
Yeah.
And like, you don't want to make a mistake, you don't want to do the wrong thing.
Right.
Because we're really like beholden to our communities. And so it's like scary in that way.
Yeah.
And then on the other way, I really, think about 7 generations. And for us, where I'm from, that's 3 back and 3 forward. And so we kind of have this practice of speaking to our greats, our great grandparents, and then our great grandchildren. And I think about my great grandchildren being able to see it, and if I could make them proud.
Oh, you will.
Thank you.
No doubt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
When you see a vision in your head and a story that you want to tell, how do you decide what medium that will best translate that story and be the voice of that interpretation?
Do you mean like between film and digital? So that's a tough question. Both can do storytelling very, very well. I will say visually with film, there's still a certain fall off to the way film looks. And if you look really closely at film photography, it just has like a different softness, and that has to do with the roundness of the chemicals and the emulsion,
right?
And of the light reaction happening. Digital has this hyper realistic resolution and like infinite resolution at this point in time, where you can create these, gigantic light boxes. The only constant in photography is change and technology. I would say the constant in photography is the capture of light and time. I prefer to play with that capture of light and time by creating moments, and sometimes by more documenting moments. And I think that those are something that are informing those choices now. I did a little bit more portrait and documentary work back home for the recent work, and it really felt like film was the right choice there. And maybe it was like the right choice at this point in time when technology is just like hurdling forward at, like it's just going too fast, like AI, I'm like, I just need to like, whoa, horsey, like let's pause and just, do some film work that's soft and slow, and let's see if it works out. And so those are kind of the choices that I'm making right now with film, which is like, I feel like I'm just talking about that for the first time. So, thank you for the question, but something feels right about film right now.
Your work is visual. There's no question about that. Do you think of yourself also as a writer of visual narratives?
I think it's wonderful to be able to work with a visual medium that can spark dialogue in people. And when I started out and I was bumbling around as the liberal arts major, I really thought my path in life would be to teach Native studies. I just knew like there was so much that was wrong about what was happening from elementary to university level in public schools, that it's hard not to be passionate about that. Photography's and art's ability to do that, I think, is not heard enough by students, that it can be a highly intellectual pursuit, that it does so much for cultural preservation and for advocacy and for activism in so many different ways. And I am so thankful to be able to create those narratives and still be able to do that through photography. But I think one of the most life-changing things has been traveling around to like university and schools and talking about the subject matter in the work. Yeah. And it's like actually doing that thing that I hoped it would do a really long time ago.
It's kind of interconnected itself in a natural way for you.
People are able to teach issues through art, and that's amazing.
So what's next for Cara Romero, and what stories are you working on now?
Well, I have the first book that came out that's associated with the solo show that went up at the Hood Museum on January 19th. It's called Panapu Nuwugai, Living Light, and it is a survey of about 14 years of my life's work. It has over 65 objects, installations, and this incredible catalog. It just came down from the Hood and is traveling to Phoenix Art Museum. It's traveling to Jacksonville Museum of Contemporary Art, and then it's traveling to the Smithsonian NMAI in New York in 2027. And so that's just a really big deal. And I'm so thankful for that happening. And then Diego and I also have a 2-person show that's traveling. It's at the Crocker Museum right now and is coming to Albuquerque Museum. And that is 20 objects each and based in everything from, historic perspective told from the indigenous side to indigenous futurism in that show.
It's exciting. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see all these things come. Well, Cara, thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing your story and your time with us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Much continued success as you continue your journey and telling us stories that are just so captivating.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy Indian Market.
We will.
Absolutely.
Cara reminds us that photography can do more than document. It can transform perception. Through artistry and vision, Cara continues to reshape the narrative, one powerful image at a time. This is Beyond the Art.